course of life goes on and on.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Retro Encounter. As always, I'm Josh Curry. With me is Alana Hagues.
Hello.
Caitlin Argyros.
Hey, guys.
And Robert Fenner.
Master, check out my mad skills.
Oh, yes, we got that in there. Yes, good.
Oh, so glad.
Hammer is such a doofus,
And
but a lovable doofus.
If that
It
wasn't
is.
enough of a hint, we are talking about Xenogears.
AKA the best RPG of all time still, after all these years, and I will fight you on that.
AKA a troubling, charming mess.
Yeah.
I don't even want to start the conversation with this argument, but I just can't agree with that. I fundamentally can't agree with that.
Well,
There's a very particular reason why.
No.
when you get out of your house in Lahan, maybe you'll see why.
You'll
Fine.
see.
We'll save that argument for part 2 of this podcast. But in the meantime...
I will back up and say it's still one of the best.
Fine. Okay.
RPGs of all
no,
time.
I'm okay with that.
Alright, we
Yeah.
agree with that. Good.
We don't have to go to blows over it then, that's fine. But there's a lot of really good RPGs, many of which we've discussed on the wonderful Retro Encounter. But
And this is one of them.
fine,
This is the
sure.
new one.
Okay, that's fine. So let's start this podcast like we always do when we start on a new game. Let's kind of go through everybody's history with it. This game came out in America in '98, so it's been a while. So I'm guessing all of you have played it before? Maybe?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not from America, so no. This is my first time.
To this day, it has still never been officially released in Europe.
What's wrong with you, Europe?
Well,
Terrible. I will, yeah.
we can have a whole
Wait.
podcast on everything that's wrong with Europe, but
I'm going to be on that and fight you.
everybody wants to fight me. I'm
But
supposed to be
this
the
is-
lovable host. Why does everybody want to fight me?
The host who people love to hate.
Oh.
It's okay,
Ouch.
Josh.
You wounded me.
Oh.
But I feel like whenever we have a conversation about any game that starts with Xeno, we have to start with Caitlin. Like,
Of course.
the absolute
Well,
lover of all Xenos.
You've seen my signature on the boards. I'm the Dark Souls of Xeno everything. Although I know that one of our editor emeritus and one of my good friends, Liz Moss, would probably fight me for that title because she's also a Xeno super fan. So we can be co-Dark Souls of Xeno everything, Liz, if you're listening. But yeah, I played this back when it was originally released on PS1. It was one of my very first RPGs, and I think I found out about it because I had a demo disc that came with, and I do not remember which game it was with. It might have been.
I think this came in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, and it was like it was the opening chunk of the game, and I thought it was cool. And actually, after playing 7 and getting super depressed by Eris dying in 7, I was like, I want an RPG that's got a good romance where there isn't a heartbreaking death, and I didn't quite get that.
Ha!
I was going to say, what drove you to this? Like, it's not a very happy game.
I know, right? Like, in some ways, it's even more soul crushing than Eris dying in 7. But anyway, that was kind of my path to Xenogears, and then I played it, and it was awesome. And it's still, story-wise at least, like plot complexity-wise, is one of the games I compare a lot of RPGs to, fairly or unfairly. It's like it's just so thick with all the things going on, all the little threads, and then you find out, if you've looked at like websites or checked out the art book, that, oh no, this was actually only supposed to be one story out of 6 total episodes that were planned, and then you're like, holy crap.
Even the game itself says that. at one point.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I'm a huge Xeno fan, and I'm a huge Xeno defender, especially with this game being as old as it is and as problematic as a history as it had in development. So, yeah, I like Xenogears. If that wasn't already obvious.
No, that I'm happy you're able to explain it so well, because I would have guessed.
I know.
So, what about you, Robert? Because you are over in the UK now, right? So
I'm in the UK. I was in America when this came out.
okay.
So this came out when I was 13, and I was a massive Squaresoft fan back then. So I was hungrily devouring every RPG that they sent our way. And this one, I think it came out in like fall or winter. I remember distinctly that I rented it during Christmas break when I was off school because I couldn't afford to buy it. And I could only rent games for like 2 days at a time, but I blazed through the first half. Like, I got from the start to the Tower of Babel in 48 hours. And playing this again now and like getting that far in about 2 weeks has made me realize, Jesus, how did I do that back then?
It's so depressing when you look back and what was so easy as a kid.
Yeah, or just how much time I had, or how much time I devoted to one piece of media back then.
Yeah, because there's just stuff that I was willing to do that, like, it didn't even seem like torture, and now it feels like somebody's like waterboarding me. It's just like, what? Why am I just? A perfect example when we did tactics, and Caitlin was amazed at how much I grinded throughout all my characters, and it was torturous in some regards, but it was one of those things like I had to do it. But I remember, and I wasn't even that young when I played tactics for the first time, but it was super, super easy, and life catches up with you at some point, I guess. We're all getting old.
Yeah, you're getting old. I am. I'm young and beautiful.
I didn't say
And
anything about beauty.
Robert is too, because we're apparently the same age. So.
What do you know? Xenogears really spoke to me at the time. I think maybe a better title for the game would be Xenogenesis Evangelion, due to how much it cribs from Evangelion. But I really, really like Evangelion. This maybe is a bit more flagrant in how it uses symbolism to no real end. But I found everything about it very evocative. I liked how dark it was. Sometimes there were some weird tonal shifts, but a lot about it really spoke to me at the time. So I have very, very fond memories of this. It was clunky then. It's clunkier now, but getting a chance to play through it again with all of you has been a real joy.
So now, switching gears, Alana. Never played it before. What is your first blush of Xenogears?
I'm very much in love with it. I think for the whole Xenoverse, Europe have pretty much been left out. Like, we've had Xenosaga 2, Episode 2, which is like the worst one. And
that was it.
We didn't get 1 or 3, so it's like, we'll just get the filling and not like the bread. But
that must have been so confusing when we were starting up that game.
And I had a chipped PlayStation 2 because I had loads of American games, and because Xenosaga 1 was on a DVD 9, like even with a chip or with Swap Magic, it just wouldn't read that disc. So I was never ever able to play it.
Oh, but no, my first taste of the Xenoverse was Xenoblade. So Xenoblade and X are very different to Xenogears, but from what I've seen and played of Xenogears, I've very, very much fallen in love with it. I think, like everyone says, it's all the tonal shifts, the Evangelion kind of rip, which is really good. And I've got a real thing for symbolism and religious archetypes reused in RPGs and fiction in any way. So this is like really speaking to me. I think it's probably the most use I've got out of my degree since I've been out of uni as well, because I've had to like pull it apart and be like, okay, so what does this mean and what does that mean? But I like it because it's not obviously telling you everything. It's like dropping hints, and I'm really enjoying digging through all those little bits of hints and going, I wonder what's going to happen. But like basically, I love it, but I don't trust anybody. That's kind of where I am at the moment.
That's a good space to be.
Yeah,
everyone's kind of shady right now.
Yeah.
So it's easy to talk about kind of the story, but what have you thought of the actual gameplay mechanics, Alana?
Well, for the most part, I've not got any major issues with it. I think I think we may have spoken about this before. I don't remember if it was on Zelda or before Zelda, but we were speaking about how like games from this era, so like mid-90s PlayStation 1 era to like the end of that, and we were talking briefly about how things have changed so much. So like all the controls are quite clunky. Like I think I remember going back to play Final Fantasy VII a couple of years ago and thinking, oh god, like the camera changes and you suddenly move in a different direction, and it's like, no, like it's quite difficult to adjust to. But I've not really had any major issues with them. I think they're a little clunky. I think my biggest issue is possibly the jumping. Like I got really excited you could jump, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then it's the triangle button, so I'm like running, and then I have to like move my thumb forward, and I'm like, oh, please. And then 9 times out of 10, with the Tower of Babel especially, the worst bit is just jumping over those little gaps, and you're not in line. And then you either overshoot or undershoot it, or you just don't even press the button. Like you press it too late, and it's like, well, I'm in the water. But yeah, and the camera. The camera is a little loose, is the only word I can think of to describe it right now. But you can press one of the shoulder buttons and you'll probably be like do a whole 360 in half a second, which is great. But otherwise I can live with it. I think it's just a product of age, and I can sort of see past that a little bit, which is nice.
Or the random battle system kicks in when you're trying to execute a jump over a gap and you just fall down and then you fight.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you know there's a random battle coming because 1, you can't jump, and 2, the music stops. And it's like, oh, I know it's coming, but yeah, or I'm trying to open a door. That's the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the battles pop up, it seems like a little bit too frequently. Like I've had a couple of times where like I would battle, walk a few steps, another battle. Okay. I got it. But yeah, it's I don't. Part of the issue I think is I don't know why they made it so that you have to hold down circle to run. Like most RPGs anyway that I've played, it's usually the opposite. You have to hold a button to walk. Your normal movement is quick.
Pokemon.
This was the style back then.
It's true.
But I mean, like especially because you have platforming and some of the jumps require that you be running in order to have enough momentum to get across the gap, and it's just a little awkward having to switch buttons like that. And on top of camera control, which I mean, I don't know. I actually mapped L1 and R1 to the right analog stick to give me another option since that's a bit more natural for me now, using the right analog stick to control camera. But still, I mean, it's like there's a lot of stuff for your thumb to do to manage those jumps. And I mean, there's only really an issue in 2 spaces, and that was when you're trying to get to the border and you're going through the mountains with Faye and those random gears, and there's a couple of running jumps. And then, of course, Babel. The hardest part for me in Babel was actually getting on that stupid rope on the lower level. I missed it completely the first time because I didn't have the right angle on the camera. So, yeah.
Well, the most insulting bit is at the end of all the jumping puzzles at Babel, you get that cutscene where all of the gears just fly over a gap.
I was like, really? Now you want to work?
Well, they have jetpacks. We see them fly. I don't know why they can't just fly up that thing. Come on.
Well, so we kind of talked about this back. This is Parasite Eve, Caitlin. The PlayStation era was such a weird time just in general, like you mentioned, like controls. Why are they doing things weird? I feel like we went from Super Nintendo specifically, where everything was so figured out, everything was very exacting, and then they're like, oh, there's polygons now. Like now we have no idea how to do anything, and that's like kind of where my guess would be with kind of how this went terribly wrong, like with some of the controls. Is just everything just went weird during this time. I don't know.
Well, one of the interesting things about this is one of Square's earliest fully 3D worlds, where things like Parasite Eve and the Final Fantasy games used the pre-rendered backgrounds. It was just like this and Brave Fencer Musashi that had like a fully 3D explorable, rotatable world. So it was very early on for them, especially.
So let's talk about characters. Does anybody have favorites? Anybody? Alana, is there any initial feelings about anybody?
I have a favorite. My favorite is probably Citan right now, and I think that will stick. But all of the characters are great. I really, really, all of them, like villains in inverted commas, I'll say, because I feel like there's something going on there. But every single one of them. Maybe Faye took a little bit of time to get going. I think Faye initially wound me up a little bit. He's kind of like overly dramatic, kind of, I didn't destroy the village, it wasn't my fault, kind of thing. Just like, oh, okay, maybe you'll take a while to gel. But the way he's developed, even like at the halfway point, I think especially from when him and Bart were like, we're going to go and rescue out of there and take it back, and from then on he's been brilliant. But I love the characters because every single one of them is flawed, and every single one of them, they're not like doing the best thing in the world, they're not trying to be really good, but they're doing something that's right for them. And I think going back to Faye again, after Faye's initial like kind of panicky like existential crisis at the beginning, even though it's carrying on throughout, I find Faye quite relatable in a way. I don't know whether that's just because we might have been in the same position of kind of wonder who are we and what is our purpose. I mean, I think that's kind of quite important for the game anyway. I think that's kind of at its core right now for me. But the characters are really good, and I would be interested to hear what people thought of, like, if anybody has any other favorites and why, because obviously the other two have played the game, so they know more than I do.
Yeah. So without giving too much away, Robert and Caitlin, what are your general thoughts on the character? Like, okay, since you guys have played before, have you started noticing differences in the characters, or like are there little mannerisms that you didn't notice, or hints of things in some characters? Is it well written enough that you've kind of been able to appreciate a different side of some of these characters?
I mean, there are little quirks that I've forgotten over the years in some of the characters, and things that I don't know. Since I was also about 13 years old when I originally played it, maybe there are things, little subtleties that I didn't quite pick up on. I mean, like we mentioned, some of the characters have a really dark history. Bart and Billy both have pretty dark parts of their past, and I don't know that I was mature enough or had been exposed to some of these issues that they've dealt with. I really kind of fully understood what was going on and why it was so tragic, some of the things that happened to them. I don't remember Faye being so whiny. Like, I actively dislike him up until he gets his shit together and decides to help Bart take back Eva and rescue Margie and all that, because he's just, I mean, I get where he's coming from. It would have been unrealistic if he had been totally cool with it, but at the same time, it's just like, dude. And then there are characters like, because I know what's going to happen later in the game, that I'm paying a lot more attention to what they're doing now. Like, I think we're all of us, Alana included, are kind of side-eyeing Citan because, we've seen evidence
yeah.
already that he's doing more than he's telling. But I'm also like, since I know some of the specifics of what he's doing and what he's involved in, I'm also looking at everything that he's doing and saying and how he's kind of guiding Faye a little bit. And I'm like, I don't know how much of it is him actually wanting to help and how much of it is his ulterior motive when it comes to Faye. So, as far as favorites are concerned, we briefly met my favorite when we went to Zeboam, but she hasn't joined the party yet. She hasn't actually been introduced and been given a name yet. So, but
is that the green-haired girl?
Yep, that is my favorite. She's actually like one of my favorite video game characters of all time. So, I love her lots.
Nice.
What about you, Robert?
My favorites are Franz, because he's a cool dolphin, and the Captain of Thames, because he's a cool walrus.
Yeah.
I was only half joking. I really love both of those character designs, and I also I like their characters as limited as they are. I actually have I don't know if favorite or likable would be a good thing, but two of my favorite characters to observe are the villains Ramses and Miang, and what they are up to, because is with the baddies who are doing awful things, but he seems to have his own moral code that he insists on sticking to, and he also seems to have some relation to certain characters in the party. And he's got some complexes of his own, which haven't been fully explored at what part we are in the game at the moment. And Miang, the purple-haired lady who appears to be his assistant, is hiding a lot more than she appears to be letting on with him. And so, like, she's his assistant and his lover, but you can see in certain cutscenes that she seems to be playing him for a fool.
I do really like the moments where she goes aside and talks to Graf behind it. It's Graf behind everybody else. And it's sort of like, there's something going on here. And you don't really fully get it, because you kind of get snippets of what they're saying, or you get like the middle part without the context and the reasoning. But Graf is another character who I'm really interested to see what happens. And Id, because I think Id and Ramses are linked for some reason. But I'm looking forward to that. But Miang is definitely interesting.
Yeah.
I do really like Yang and Ramses greatly. I really like the villains in this game, because they don't feel like villains. They don't have an aligning motive, any of them. So, like, every single group has got something different, or they want Faye for something different, but you don't know why or what yet. So, hopefully that's going to pan out interestingly.
There's so many factions with different interests at heart here, and that's something that you didn't really see back in the late 90s when this came out, which made it very unique. From what I understand, I seem to remember reading a long time ago that before the budget was slashed, Ramses was supposed to be playable in the later half of the game, but as it stands, he just puts up a very, very tough fight instead.
That would have been interesting, and that would have made sense. With the revelations that we haven't gotten to yet. I mean, he has major issues, but it would have made sense for him to eventually join the party.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Miang is very... Well, I don't know. It's I can't say.
We can't really say much till the next episode.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The game hasn't really revealed what's going on with her yet, and what's going on with Graf, too. I mean, both of them have long histories that we don't find out about until much later. But it's really cool once you get to that point and you're kind of like, oh, it puts the rest of the game and the history of the world that the game shows you into a lot of context once you know what's really going on with them. And is it just... I was always kind of creeped out by Cain, the Emperor of Solaris.
The spooky mask.
Yeah.
Is it a mask? Because I always thought that, it's kind of hard to tell from the character artwork, but it just looks like he's a skeleton, basically. Like he's lived for so long that he's decayed away, and all that's left is the bone.
He's got a spooky face.
Pretty much.
I don't like spooky faces. Creep me out. So, and this kind of hard. I know you guys wanted to talk about this because there's a lot going on with meaning and kind of plot related to symbolism and where the main thrust is. We can touch on it a little bit. I'm guessing a lot of the next podcast will be about what is the greater meaning of Xenogears. But I guess one of the big things I had heard before we were going into this was be prepared to sit and listen a lot. Get ready for, I think the quote was Metal Gear-esque cutscenes.
Oh yeah.
There is a lot of text, and it has a very, very slow speed that you can't skip through.
I disagree that it's slow. It's perfectly speedy for me.
I feel like you just made fun of yourself.
Okay, but when you die to a boss and you have to get through reams and reams of text to try and challenge him again, it feels a little bit slow then.
Well,
the problem there is not that the text is slow; it's that you can't skip to the end of a line by hitting the button like you can.
That's what I mean by
games.
slow.
Yeah, that sucks. I hate when I accidentally talk to an NPC again and they have like 3 boxes of text and I'm like, I'm really sorry. Can you just shut up? I already heard what you had to say. I really don't care.
Or in the case of that NPC in the first house in Lahan that opens up a separate cutscene whenever you speak to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit much.
Yeah.
So are you enjoying kind of all of that, Alana?
I like it.
You like the deep kind of everything?
Yeah, I do like the deep kind of everything. I can't really give an answer though, because I think at halfway, not everything is pieced together yet. Like I feel like I've only just touched the surface, but I like where it's going. I mean, there are some really, like, I knew that it was very philosophical, psychological, kind of religious, theological, everything under the sun kind of, but there's nothing more obvious than having a character named Id, and I was like, come on. I was like, how Freudian do you want to get? Like, there's more to come, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah,
they do like their Freud.
But I do like how deep it is. It makes it feel more human. Like, I feel like it's an exploration of the characters as well as an exploration of the world and the universe, rather than like just a simple let's go and save the world. Oh no, there's an ecological disaster. Oh no. But I like where it's going, and I really want to know what happens, but I don't. It's like
So it sounds like you're actually being more drawn towards the character plate than the actual, I guess, overall theme.
I think so at the moment anyway. I mean, I still kind of feel like the overall theme hasn't hit. I think I've had hints of it, so
it hasn't really yet.
I've had like, obvious, yeah, like we're at Shavat, and I've seen the words like we need to get rid of or fight Solaris to release the Lamb's control. So I'm assuming there is kind of a god complex somewhere. So when that comes to light, I'm going to pay like extra attention to it. But so far, it's the characters that are keeping me going. I mean, I tend to be drawn towards characters more in RPGs anyway than the story. I think if you've got a very good set of characters, then you can get away with a cliched story. But this one's got a bit of both. But I think it's just got a bit longer to pick up before I'm like, oh, this is really, really, really good. But what I've seen so far is great. So like no problems at the moment with the story or the characters at all.
Awesome. So as an outsider to this, I will really admit I always wanted to play Xenosaga. Never did, unfortunately. Xenoblade I played like the first couple hours and kind of petered out. How do all of these fit together?
They don't.
Oh boy. Well,
jeez. Like a really mismatched jigsaw.
This is the anti-Xenoblade.
They don't.
Very much.
Well, that's just depressing. You guys were supposed to give me like an uplifting conversation from this.
Well, I mean, there are elements of Xenogears in Xenoblade, more so in X than in the original, because obviously Gears, and there's actually a lot of similar themes. Not necessarily the religious themes, but some of the setting themes are similar between Xenogears and Xenoblade X. I mean, the most obvious being you have giant gears and you're stranded on a foreign planet and have to survive and stuff like that. But I mean, like, none of the games are directly connected. The closest would actually be Xenogears and Xenosaga. Xenosaga was supposed to be basically a retelling of the first couple episodes, or well, eventually the entirety of the Xenogears story, and of course got bogged down. Took 3 episodes to basically tell episode 1, or the pre of episode 1 from the original timeline. But because obviously
robot ladies in underwear.
Yeah, and they couldn't be directly connected because they had broken away from Square, who still owned the rights to Xenogears, so they couldn't actually make it a direct prequel. But it's close enough to some of the basic events, and they obviously have Easter eggs all over the place, like main characters whose name is our Uzuki, and Jin even looks like Saiton. And then episode 3 had gear fights that were clearly you were fighting Id's Weltall and fighting the elements. They eventually do something cool. I don't want to spoil it for Alana, but there's a boss fight in Xenosaga 3 that's reminiscent of a boss fight against them. So, and certain characters who I can't name because that would also be a spoiler that make an appearance in the trilogy. So it's, they've always been kind of like a loosely connected, more connected, so technically, I guess, than like the Final Fantasy games, which are really only connected in name only. There's almost nothing shared between them besides names and Moogles and things like that. There's a bit more of a connection, but none of them are directly connected story-wise or, for the most part, character-wise, outside of like cameos and stuff like that.
Mm. And Xenoblade's even further removed. I mean, that game was originally called Monado, and the team said, you know what, Takahashi, we love you and we love Xeno, so let's call this Xenoblade. So that's where that came from.
Which is why it's so hilarious to see people complaining about how this doesn't really feel like a Xeno game to me. Well, newsflash, it wasn't supposed to be. Although, despite the fact that it wasn't supposed to be, Takahashi still gets some of his, religious themes thrown in there. You're supposed to be, everyone lives on the dead husk of 2 gods, so already you've got that sort of god complex thrown in there.
Yeah.
But they're all different experiences. I mean, cameo and some thematic similarities aside, Xenogears is a different experience from Xenoblade. Xenoblade's different from both Gears and the Saga. They all have their good things and their bad things, different strengths and different weaknesses, and it's fun as a fan of the series to go from one to the other and see how certain things have evolved and changed, and to search out for those little Easter eggs that are present in every game that make you think, this is kind of a Gears twist, or this reminds me of Xenosaga a lot. It's kind of a nice thing to have, and I look forward to hopefully more games because Xenoblade X really needs a sequel.
Needs to be on a good system.
Whoa.
Here we go.
Them's fine words. I don't really disagree.
True,
I give a lot of crap to Nintendo, and I know a lot of people get upset about it. Nobody is going to disagree that at the very least the Wii U is super underperformed.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
And third party support is not what it should be.
Like non-existent. There is no third party support. And that's
is there much first-party support at the moment?
Yeah, exactly.
No,
when
not really.
Nintendo's not supporting their own system, I feel like I have a little bit more freedom to complain about the system as a whole.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. Like I recently saw a graph that was comparing Smash sales, and the latest Smash combined sales, Wii U and 3DS, were about the same as the sales for the Wii version of the previous Smash Brothers, and the majority of them are 3DS sales.
Jeez.
So yeah.
Wow.
When you think about it, and obviously this is super tangent, but that's why we love retro, right? Like the Wii is something that was absolutely an anomaly. Like you look and it was on like CNN at night because like grandmothers wanted to play bowling with like their friends and whatnot. And that's something that would have been almost impossible for Nintendo to replicate. But I feel like the lessons learned from the Wii were not the right choices for the Wii U. And I feel like the successes of the Wii U, because I always bag on it, like, oh, they have no good games. Obviously, it's hyperbole because we're talking about Xenoblade X. That's fantastic, right? But it set up an environment that was hard for games to even be able to stand out in. And then their terrible naming conventions.
Yeah, that didn't help.
Definitely not.
But yeah. Maybe on that NX, there's always a chance. Maybe they'll
Please.
release it on like the PlayStation, so people.
Well,
actually
Monolith are
experience it.
owned by Nintendo now.
I know.
So
Yeah.
no chance of
Yeah.
Well, I'm holding out hope to play Mario on my PS5.
that.
So there's always a hope, right?
Does Nintendo go the way of Sega?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh
It's
wow.
depressing to think about, but also at like the same time, like super amazing. Moment of silence. Is that what we're doing now?
I bought my Wii U exclusively for Xenoblade X, and I was pretty
Yes.
satisfied. So,
Me
Good.
too.
Kind of universally, I've only heard kind of two camps. One, they bought it for Xenoblade X, and the other one being they bought it for Smash Brothers. And the Smash Brothers group is much smaller than the Xenoblade X group, so I think that's kind of telling. And then everybody's like, "Oh, well, I got this Mario Maker that worked out well, right?" Like, yeah, sure, I can get down with that.
I got my Wii U for Xenoblade X, and it came with Smash, and I got Xenoblade X on disc, so I had to download the data packs, and guess what I got rid of to make space for the data packs?
oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. I am not a Smash fan. And I'm not ashamed to say that I'm not a Smash fan, so.
Yeah, it doesn't appeal to me.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Caitlin, any amount of hate you're gonna get for not liking Smash, I'm gonna get a lot more for talking crap about Nintendo. I know this is kind of a short episode. I feel like this is kind of like a prequel to a real episode, though. I feel like we're gearing up to have a lot of really, really in-depth conversations about lots of secrets that we're kind of hedged around. So for all the listeners, I apologize. This is, I believe, next to our April Fool's podcast, our shortest podcast.
We're finished?
Well, the problem is every time I say something, I'm like, well, I have a really good answer, but we can't say anything because Alana hasn't gotten there. So
I'm trying.
I don't think
getting
this is on Alana, buddy.
No, this is not
No,
Alana.
actually, yeah, definitely not. Don't even start turning it on me. You attacked Europe. Don't attack me personally. You're not. Don't worry. I'll let you.
Well, and also, it's just like so much of what I think Robert and I want to say about Xenogears is sort of wrapped up in the entire package,
Right.
and stuff that doesn't happen until the second disc, and it's hard, I guess, to talk about. It's especially hard to talk about symbolism in the game without knowing the entirety of the story, because you don't really. There's so much religious symbolism that doesn't quite. I mean, it's there. I guess it can seem like it's just there to be there, but once you know what's really going on, it takes on a whole new meaning. And it's kind of like I can't talk about the importance of of all the god myths that are being thrown around in Xenogears without talking about, what happens at the end. So
Right. That's a perfect explanation of what I was trying to muddle through. So we're a little light on this episode, but I promise a very meaty, delicious treat for episode 2.
There's going to be so much crazy stuff to talk about in episode 2. Oh my god.
So this is like
excited.
this is like us just teasing a much better episode than this one. I apologize for that.
More text, more talking, more cutscenes in episode 2.
So, I forgot that our gunslinging priest, Billy, almost became a rent boy. I don't remember that line being in the game when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I guess I just didn't pick it up then.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
When he said that, I was like, oh.
Really sneaked that past the censors.
They sneaked a lot past the censors. They really, actually, jumping off of that, the fact that this game managed to get released, considering how much religious overtone is in it, is quite amazing. I think I'd consider it probably because so many RPGs now use the corrupt religious organization or some form of religious framing. But this feels like one of the first.
And nobody cared because nobody was watching in the media.
This is the game that makes them care going forward, I think.
Yeah.
Or one of the games that makes them care, because this is one of the first games. I think people, when they think about religious symbolism, they probably think about Xenogears and Takahashi in general.
Yeah.
But, I mean, still, it's like a subset of a subset who remember this game fondly. It's still fairly obscure by mainstream gaming standards. Yeah. But, it was the big un, so to speak.
Well, and originally it was supposed to be a Final Fantasy. It was supposed to be Final Fantasy VII, I think.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And they decided that it was too dark. That they didn't think it would appeal to Final Fantasy audiences because it was so dark. And, they're probably right, because you look at Xenogears and then you look at 7, and 7, despite some of the messed up crap in 7, seems a lot more hunky-dory than, even the first disc of Xenogears. So, and that's not even the worst part of Xenogears. So,
Yep.
But, I mean, I find myself being kind of grateful that worked out that way. I mean, I love Final Fantasy, but this, I think, feels so much more unique and its own thing because it was able to be its own IP and not just be part of the Final Fantasy experience. Although I also wonder how the production would have changed if it had been a Final Fantasy. Would they still have gone with the 2D sprites on 3D background, which is pretty distinct from anything Final Fantasy's done over the years? Or would they have made it look more like 7 or 8 or whatnot? And how would that have maybe changed people's opinions of the game? But I mean, the Xeno series is totally distinct to my mind from Final Fantasy, and I'm glad that it worked out that way.
I mentioned this, I think, multiple times now on different podcasts for Retro. I love Final Fantasy, but I think Square specifically is at its best when it's doing its quote-unquote side projects. When they're able to kind of take a step back, they're able to experiment, or I feel like the personality of the developers come out more. I do feel like there is a sense of we need to fill certain boxes because that's what the audience expects of us. And I feel like when you just by giving it a new title, even though it's still Square, it steps out of being a Square game and it becomes something more. I think Xenogears, I think we talked about it on Parasite Eve. I love The World Ends With You. And now recently, with Bravely Default and whatnot, everybody loves, I think, when they take chances, and I don't feel like they have the option to take a lot of chances when it comes to Final Fantasy.
No, because they're so wrapped up in what their perceived image of Final Fantasy is. Like, I actually, I don't know if you guys saw this, but was it Tabata or someone else involved in 15 who was talking about Final Fantasy disease?
It was the
that
best
was
quote
Oh,
ever.
yeah.
It was so
And
fantastic.
how, like, even we talk about fans getting mixed up in, what's good Final Fantasy, what's good for the series, and fighting over how, this Final Fantasy was a misstep and it ruined the series, or the series gone downhill. But to hear that within Square itself, Square Enix itself, there are, the people actually working on the games are also dealing with that and having that affect possibly how they're designing the games. So it's really like, I wasn't necessarily surprised, because if the fans can experience it, certainly the developers can too. But at the same time, that was kind of like, wow, if they're dealing with that sort of the pressure of keeping Final Fantasy, and keeping the pedigree of the series as it is, and sort of infighting as to what that means, that's kind of telling for the way the series has devolved a little bit lately.
Yeah, and it was extremely cleverly phrased, because he was basically calling everybody out that you need to be open to change, because that's how things can get better. Be something, like I said, be something more. But everybody's so hung up on the past, essentially, and everybody's perception of what Final Fantasy should be is completely different. I guarantee you, if all four of us went right now and said, "This is what Final Fantasy did to me," it'd be wildly, wildly different.
Yep.
And so it becomes.
Yeah.
At some point, you're trying to guess what everybody else wants, and it just becomes a mess.
Yeah, nostalgia can be good, but it shouldn't take over. It shouldn't take over the future. It shouldn't necessarily define the future of the series. I mean, certainly callbacks can be great. 9 was really fun because it was a callback to older Final Fantasies, but it also did its own thing. It took it in its own direction. It wasn't just nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, and it ended up being one of the best games in the series because of it.
Till 12.
Yeah, well, yes, till 12. Because 12 is the best
See,
Final
thank you,
Fantasy.
that
Caitlin.
statement.
I knew Caitlin would agree with me.
I totally agree with you.
That's why we keep you around.
That's my other nickname, is the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy 12.
See,
So
I didn't want to say this because we were in the intro. I don't feel like the Dark Souls of something is a compliment. It just means that it's bad.
Hey, I take umbrage with that.
I'm not a huge Dark Souls fan, but I like using that phrase. I get its meaning.
I get it. I know what you're saying. That's why I've never given you crap about it before. But it's just like, oh, so you're the terrible combat of the Xeno series. Okay.
Speaking of the combat, though, what do you guys think about the combat? Like the way the on foot and gear battle systems work?
I like it. I wish learning death blows wasn't quite so opaque, and how it doesn't really tell you that they correspond with learning gear death blows. But I have some kind of like funny affection for inputting the light, medium, and heavy commands. It reminds me a little bit of Legend of Legaia, but I think it's executed better here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Legaia was really fun.
Yeah. This is similarly fun. A little bit slow in places, and a little bit... It's like they don't tell you everything that you should know, but I still got a lot of fun out of it.
Yeah.
How about you, Alana?
Pretty much the same. I don't have a preference out of the two, but I think I quickly clocked on that the button combinations you could use to learn death blows, and then they correlated with gears. But I think it is quite opaque and quite like you have to think a little bit more. There's not really a lot of elemental stuff as well. Like, I know Ellie's obviously mage / ether based, but I don't really find myself using it that much, even though she's supposed to be really good at it. But I like the button combination thing. I think it's quite nice. It's quite different. It adds a bit more involvement into turn-based. So like, whereas you're not just pushing one button, you're pushing 3 or 4, and you come up with a different outcome. And I like that. But I don't have a preference between the two, thinking about it. I like both of them quite equally. I'm assuming there's more gear combat to come in the second half, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Good.
Yeah. There's loads more and more gears, and haven't even met the best gear yet.
Ah.
And I'm not going to say who that is or who I think it is, although Robert probably knows what I'm referring to.
I can take a guess.
Yeah. There's a certain character who completely gets broken if you work hard enough and can easily outstrip everyone else, and the gear as well, despite some handicaps, can be super overpowered. So, yeah.
I didn't realize how easy it was to break Ellie and turn her into a powerhouse. She always kind of lagged behind in my last playthrough, but I've thrown a bunch of like ether doubling equipment on her, and she's wiping everybody out with her spells now.
Yeah, see, I missed out on that, so I think I'll catch up with that. She has been really good though. Like, Aerod's is like the go-to.
Yeah.
So yeah, hope fingers crossed.
You'll get your chance to trick her out again.
Nice. Good.
Yeah, I think. Obviously, I like fighting in giant robots, but I thought it was also cool how they made gear combat connected but still distinct from on-foot combat, and the added element of the fuel resources, while a little stressful in certain battles where you're like, do I use booster or am I going to run out of fuel, and what happens if I run out of fuel? And up until you get the frame HPs where you can restore your HP, it's also like a race against time, kill the enemy before I ran out of health. But that was kind of a little bit of a resource management thrown in that you don't have to really do on foot, or in a lot of RPGs where the only thing you're worrying about is keeping your HP and your magic high. But here you have to balance fuel costs and your frames, HP, and things like that. I thought that was kind of a neat feature to have.
Yeah. At least you don't die if you lose all your fuel. That's a nice thing. I spent ages panicking about that, and then it happened, and I was like, oh no, Bart's dead. And I'm like, no, he's not. And I was like, okay. But it was like the minor stress panic kind of thing. And with the HP as well, until you get those little armor equipment, I was just so stressed out all the time about fighting in gears. But now I've got them, I do really like it.
What did you guys think of some of the boss battles? I noticed that I guess I didn't notice this the first time through, or I forgot. This seems to really enjoy like the concept of the puzzle boss. You know what I mean?
Like some of them, like Ramses and his mirror stance and knowing when not to attack.
Yeah.
A lot of takes on the Mist Dragon of Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah.
Like Ramses worked for me. Some of the later battles with Ramses, like when he's in the underwater ship, I feel like his mirror stance drags on a little bit too long, and that battle just goes on for way longer than it should.
Yeah, I had like the hardest time, I think, with that fight, because he would shoot off his little claws and they would hit multiple people. Ellie actually died in that fight for me, because he kept hitting her multiple times and I didn't get a chance to restore her HP. So I hated that fight, but luckily Ramses is always a little so whoops, I'm sorry, I said it.
He's a little rich, you can tell from his outfit.
Oh yeah.
That's what she said.
That's what I meant.
Good save, guys.
Good job.
Like,
it had to happen sooner or later. Can't help myself.
Yes, that was the only boss fight I died against, actually. That really wound me up. I think that was more because I couldn't find the gear shop in the Thames. I was like, where is it? So I didn't upgrade Ellie's gear, and of course, and Bart's as well, because Bart had been gone for about 10, 15 hours. So I was like, I was also thinking, I'm not sure if it counts as the puzzle boss, because I didn't find most of the bosses were okay. I've not really had any trouble. The only other one that maybe gave me a bit of trouble is the one at the end of the sewers, Red Worm.
Oh, Red Rum.
Yeah, but that's just more preparation, I think. I think I went in and expected that I would have to use revival items, but it was just the kind of, like, if you know that Citan has the all cast spell and then the reduce fire spell and do that, it's okay.
He gave me a lot of trouble back in the day, but I didn't have much difficulty with him this time through. I guess I was prepared this time, but yeah. I remember him being a nightmare for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, that instant kill, that murder skill is just kind of annoying.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about? I think we've largely covered a lot of our notes. Just nobody wants to talk about the secret stuff.
Well, I mean, we could, but it would be spoilers galore. I don't want to ruin it for Alana.
Well, let's hang back on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would like to refresh my memory with it as well, as I haven't beaten this game in like over 10 years. So.
Then you guys are gonna let me actually wrap up the show this time?
Yeah.
Since I started like 20 minutes ago trying. In that case, so after this month, when we're done with Xenogears, I almost call it Xenosaga. I'm having trouble with that. So next month, after we're done with Xenogears, we are going to be playing through South Park: A Stick of Truth. So get excited for that. Lots of more, I'm sure, slips of swearing, akin to what Caitlin likes to do.
It's South Park. I mean, there's swearing in the game.
I think it goes.
So
It'd be a disservice for us not to swear the whole time. So that's how I'm gonna look at it. Absolutely. In the meantime, you guys can always get involved with the podcast by sending an email to retro@rpgfan.com. You can comment on the boards at rpgfan.com. And then we would love if you guys went on to whatever kind of place you're listening to these podcasts on, preferably iTunes, because I know we're for sure on that, and give us some sort of review, preferably 5 stars. That really helps, and that would be awesome.
I think we're on Google Play now, if that's your bag.
Yeah.
So check that out.
I'm not sure how that review process works, though, but give us a good one. Yeah. But yeah, in the meantime, that's going to do it for us here. Get super excited for the next episode, because I think it's going to be a good one.
Oh, I hope so. I'm so excited.
It is. Spoiler.
Alright, until next time, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.